Hi guys, so we're going to try and create a little bit of swelling on the nose. I'm going to pretend to break this honker. My nose is slightly squint anyway, so I'm going to break it that way. So we're just going to use some contouring colours. I'll add in some sort of darkness just around the eye just to exaggerate that fact. So let's try and do it together, okay? So I'm just going to move it kind of browny, darker foundation grease paint. And I'm just going to slightly kind of contour down the edge of my nose here. As you would, I suppose, if you were wanting a really, really skinny nose. But instead of taking it all the way down, I'm going to kind of bring it across. You can see already that's kind of creating a little bit of distortion. I'm going to do the same down here. Again, bringing it out that way. So you can automatically see, just by adding one slightly deeper shade of foundation or the grease paint, that I've created a slight disfigurement to the nose that we'll obviously work on as we go. So I just want to exaggerate that a little bit. So I'm going to have a tiny, tiny bit of a darker brown. And again, just working it down the bridge of the nose. I want to kind of create a wee bit of depth here. And then not too much, but we don't want to make it look fake. Remember, the trick is to try and make it look as real as we possibly can. So bending it sort of over there. So again, it looks a little bit dirty just now, but we can blend all that in together. So when we're putting on a kind of darker colour, we're kind of pushing that bit back, aren't we, and changing it over. So to bring a bit forward, we need to add on a little bit of a lighter tone. But before I do that, I'm just going to use a clean blending brush. Just kind of gently blend it together. Remember, we can always go back in and add a little bit more. We can always go back in and add a little bit of redness as well if it's going to be like a new initial injury, which I think would look more realistic, to be fair, especially if we are going to be, if you've ever hurt your nose before, you know you're going to have big dark kind of sore swollen eyes, so we can add that into. You can also add a little bit of blood in if that was the case. So you can see already my nose is looking slightly skewy. So the highlighted area, I don't want to go anything too white or anything like that, so it just needs to be a kind of shade closer to my skin tone. And again, less is kind of more of where we would want that to go. So that looks a bit fake, doesn't it? So we'll have to blend that in again, just using the same blending brush. Being quite precise with where you're actually blending in. We don't want to kind of move it a bit everywhere because we want to be aware of where that lighter colour is going. Just always checking as well. What I would like to do maybe is just exaggerate the darker bit going across here. So just going back in with a darker colour. You can see I've got a wee shiny nose. That's not really wee. So again, I'm going to leave the nose like that just now and just concentrate on adding soiling areas to under the eye. So again, to add the depth, use a kind of darker tone. Just using tones at the moment closest to the foundation. And I'm using a grease paint. You can use foundation if you wanted to. I always just use the Kryolan grease paint palette for myself because I like it. Again, just working that in. Again, back in with the blending brush. So that's exaggerating. That's kind of how I look in the morning when I wake up. Kind of swollen under eye. Now, to exaggerate that even more, we need to kind of lighten in here a little bit. Now, we're not going to put like white underneath because that's just going to look really fake. So again, just a colour kind of close to your skin tone that will blend together. So I'm just going back in with what I previously used. Again, be precise with your application colour. We don't need to take it all the way up, it's just kind of underneath, following that line. And then back in with your wee blending. So from a distance, I look as though I've got bags under my eyes. They look a wee bit more swollen than they did previously. And you can also see a kind of disfigurement bend to the nose. So looking at my kind of reference pictures, I'm a little bit more swollen in this area. So I'm going to add a little bit of the kind of highlight and lighter colour and just create a kind of lumped effect here where it would be more swollen. You're basically trying to give yourself the nose you don't want right now. Sorry, my hand's right in the way. And again, going back in with your brush and smooching all that colour together. Now remember, we don't want to really see too much of the product, so it needs to be quite nicely blended. And just take your time. So we want to really, really deepen that area there. Again, that's beginning to look a little bit fake, so if we just dust around the edges, can't speak, we'll get the kind of swollen look that we're looking for. And again, remember, you can always kind of go in with your finger if you find you've got a little bit too much product on there, and just bring it out. That's looking a bit better for my liking. Again, I might want a little bit more deeper tone in here, so if I get my brown again, and just gently in there, maybe in here as well. And keep kind of working it in. It's always good. Remember how I always say your reference picture, go with a real actual injury and you'll get a more realistic look. I would show you, but it's on my phone. That's not going to work. I'll post it at the end. So now just going in with a slightly darker. Again, sorry, just concentrate there. Slightly darker colour. And just creating the shape that you're going to want to make. Already you can see that's quite swollen looking, just by exaggerating that nostril. So it's quite sore. So now I've created the illusion of, sorry, now I've created the illusion of a kind of swollen nose. I'm going to add a little bit more realistic effect to it. So I'm going to add maybe a little bit of red, a bit of blood. Let's just see what happens. So as we know, a broken nose would kind of vary how it looked for the stages of the kind of healing process. If it was an instant bruise, if it was kind of mid bruise, if it was kind of healing and getting towards the end. I'm going to do this as kind of instant. I'm going to add a little bit of redness, not too much, because instantly you wouldn't have loads of red or dark red or deep bruising or anything like that. It would be more of a kind of red around the eye area, around the kind of swollen, it maybe a bit of blood. So that's kind of look we're kind of going to go and do. I'm just going to take a little bit of grease paint again and just gently dabbing that around the eye area. Again, it's going to get all blended in, so don't overly worry. I feel like I'm doing one of those Instagram kind of surgery pictures that were going around a couple of years ago. And I'm just going to blend that as always. Now we could kind of use lighter kind of colour in there as well, depending on how you got your injury. So that's always important to think about. Now you can see there I've look as though I'm doing makeup, so that's a no-no. So we need to get our fingers or sponges and get in there. Remember, it's not as if you were kind of blending out concealer or anything. This is your special effects makeup, so take it a bit higher. Get it right. Feel where your orbital bone is around the eye socket. That's where you would bruise. So if you can feel around there, that's where you should be adding the colour to. Any redness would kind of wash in there. Again. Almost as if it's like a sudden impact that you've got the bruising from. And again, we can go back in and add a wee bit of redness in here, maybe down here. I mean, you've just been through the wars a little bit. Definitely kind of around the nose, if we're going to be having a little bit of bleeding. Concentrating. So depending on the severity and how you want it to look. Do we think we need maybe a wee bit more redness? Now I'm using grease paints here, so they would need to be powdered, but you could use alcoholic paints. Not alcoholic paints, alcohol activated paints even. And again, you could always like add a cut or something if you wanted to with scar wax, depending on what your injury, but at the moment we're just looking at creating an injury using makeup. Just your simple makeup. So you can choose what stage of injury you want to recreate. Obviously I've gone for kind of initial impact. My nose is quite sore. Pretty sure if I'd just hurt my nose like this, there would have been a lot of tears, so I don't think my mascara would still be looking like this. So another note, I've obviously created this bruise this injury that I've had, but would I have mascara on like this if I'd literally just been whacked in the face and broken my nose? No. So I'm going to just use a sponge and a little bit of water and try and make my mascara look as though I've been crying, then maybe add a little bit of eye blood and a little bit of blood in my nose, and we'll see how it looks. So I've given that kind of worn look to my mascara like I have been crying. Again, I have got a bit of white in the waterline that I'll probably take away because that doesn't look very real. Again, I'm just using a little bit of the grease paint around the nostrils because I'm going to add a little bit of blood, but it just gives that kind of swollen look. So once you're kind of happy, then you can add on blood or anything like that you want to do. So I think it's always quite important to remember the swelling. So you can see that there's swelling here, there's highlight there. What I could do just to kind of make that swelling come out more is maybe just to highlight a little bit here. So again, just as we did before, using a little bit of our natural kind of tones. Just really gently in this area. And go in with your little sponge or brush, whatever you want. Just enhance that ever so slightly without looking like there's too much product on the skin. So already you can see a slight pop. And obviously it's not going to be completely symmetrical because I've got a big gash on my nose, it's not going to look symmetrical. I do, however, want to add on just a little bit more in there. Yeah, that's better. Give me nail polish. One nail done. Classic. Yeah, it looks swollen. Looks not right. So I'm going to add some blood. I just added some kind of clotted blood. I kind of want to breathe that in because it's not up my nose. I could add some kind of runnier blood, but I'm just going to leave it like that because I don't want to spill blood everywhere. I might pop a little bit of eye blood in, maybe. We'll try, see what it looks like. And there we go, a wee bit of eye blood in there. Looking a little bit worse for wears now, haven't I? It's not really a good look, actually. Crack myself seeing yourself like that. So, instant reaction. You could add a little bit more in there if you did want to kind of make it that a little bit redder. It's entirely up to you. But again, I've gone for initial sort of distressed look. So it looks quite sore. Oh yeah. So hope I never look like this. But you can give it a bash and see how we get on, okay?